Okay, hello students. In this week's writing, you're asked to write the theory section, and the theory section will invariably involve you dealing with equations. And so what I'd like to tell you in this short presentation is how to deal with equations when you start writing. So the thing with equations is, let me just start with some general comments here. When you write, of course, as we see in bullet point 1 here, it's very important that your words flow and can be read easily so you won't interrupt your reader's train of thought. Like, they just want to be able to read your words smoothly and get their train of thought going, and you know this as well when you read. And of course, flow is controlled in writing with periods, commas, sentences, and paragraphs. Like we use, of course, I know you know this, commas to slow things down, periods to end a sentence, and even sentences, we be careful not to make those too long so we don't have too much information in one sentence. And of course, paragraphs are big breaks in writing to separate ideas out. So all of these things are used here in writing, as you know, to sort of control the flow and get the idea across to our reader. Now, equations that you'll be writing with are perhaps the number one way of easily interrupting the reader's flow. And I think this is something you're familiar with from, say, reading a very dense physics textbook. Why is that? Because this is just an equation that I pulled off of Wikipedia, probably one of the most intimidating ones I could possibly find. I have no idea what it means, but here it is. But you're familiar with this. You're reading and you're trying to understand something. Maybe you have a big exam coming up and suddenly you encounter this thing right here. Like, what do you do with it? Like I said, it's a great way, equations are a great way to interrupt the flow of your reader. Why? Because they're a funny physical element. They're just this big thing that sort of sits suddenly in the flow of your words. They're very hard to decipher. Now you have to, before you continue reading, you sort of have to get up here and try to understand what all of this means. And usually they do have a very deep contextual meaning. Like, there's something very critical about this equation here that you need to understand probably before you go on. And you know how irritating those phrases are that textbook authors put in about it can easily be shown that, or is it left as an exercise to the reader that invariably might involve like proving something like this is true by inspection or something like that. You know, those things are kind of irritating. And so as you become a writer, don't make your writing worse by, say, mishandling how you deal with equations. So that's what I'm going to try to sort of tell you about in this video here. Okay. The number one thing you need to do when you deal with equations in your writing is to treat them like they are words. Okay, period. No pun intended, but treat them like they are words. In particular, equations are always punctuated just like words are. So if you put an equation in your writing and you do something funny with the punctuation of it that you wouldn't do with words, you're probably handling it wrong. So let me sort of tell you this by way of an example. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do is sort of write a little mock one-page report up that I'm going to try to explain to an intro physics students how to use Newton's law, F equals ma, and the kinematic equations. So here are the three equations I'm going to deal with, and they're three we're probably all familiar with. We have Newton's laws here, kinematic equations for velocity and position. So let's see how we can put those together into a report. Okay, so here's wrong way number one to do it. The thing that's wrong about this here is I have the equation sort of listed here, 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 and here, to sort of go. Then I have some text down here to say, well, first use equation 1 to find the acceleration, then use equation 2 to find the speed sometime later. When this is done, you can use equation 3 to find the new position of the object, and equation 4 might be a better way of using equation 1, something like that. So I'm sure that everything that's written down here is correct, but the presentation's all wrong here. Like, and what's so wrong about this is you never want to just lead with a list of equations. Okay, you never want to do that. What it feels like you're doing here is you're just dumping a bunch of equations on the reader to somehow put together, and then you're referring to them down here in your text. It doesn't really flow. It's not all interconnected. So you definitely don't want to do something like this. Okay, here's the next wrong way to do it. First, I use equation 1 to find the acceleration. Then you list the equation. Then use equation 2 to find the speed sometime later. Then you use equation 2. When this is done, you can use equation 3 to find the new position of the object. And you put an equation down here. And it might be more convenient to use this instead of equation 1. So this is getting, you know, a little better, but it's still wrong. But the issue with this writing here is, of course, the punctuation. And we say that equations are punctuated just like words. Now go back, and where would you write a sentence and put a period after it, then just dump another word after the sentence without any punctuation, for example? And then where would you start up with another sentence with just a period, then dump another equation after like this? Like, when would you write words like this? Sort of sentence and then word, and then sentence and then word, with the punctuation sort of in the state that it's in. Well, you wouldn't, and that's sort of why it's wrong. This doesn't flow very well, and it's very difficult sort of to read this with all the hard stops, with your periods here, with an equation thrown in. Okay, so this isn't the way to do it either. Okay, And here's another wrong way to do it. This is very popular, though, among students, sort of beginning writers in this mode here. So first use the equation to find the acceleration in the colon here. Then you can use the following to find the speed sometime later. So see, my words are all the same, but what's different between this one and the last slide is I have these sentences, and instead of a period, I have a colon now. Like I'm always prefixing equations with colons, and it looks like I don't have one here. And so that's kind of popular to do too, but again, it's just not punctuated properly, and the flow is just missing. So once again, what's wrong with this here is the punctuation. You're always doing, okay, here's some fact, colon. I guess I'm supposed to look at this, but then there's no punctuation here. And then here's sort of another fact, colon. There's some equation here, and sort of the same thing repeats as I go down. And it looks like I didn't do it as I went down here, but it's just the punctuation's off here again. And again, you would ask yourself, under what circumstances would you write a sentence with a colon and then put another word in there? And just like, where's the punctuation on this now? Like, where would you then, in continuing, where would you write another sentence like this? Then just put another equation without any punctuation in there. You just wouldn't write like this, and so it's not proper to do it for equations either. Okay, so this is getting a little better here, where we finally wrap the equations up into the flow a bit more. So first, use Newton's famous law, F equals ma, to find the acceleration. Wonderful, wonderful flow for the first time. Like, this is a real sentence here between these brackets right here. It's a real sentence. It has flow, it has a comma in there after the equation, and it's just a complete sentence that I can sort of read. First, use Newton's famous law, F equals ma, and there's my pause, to find the acceleration. Then you can use V is V naught plus A delta T. There's my pause, to find the speed sometime later. Lastly, the common kinematic equation, and then this with a pause in there, can be used to find the new position of the object given the acceleration, and off it goes. We still have a little problem down here with the lingering colon, but at least this one's punctuated properly. So there's a few problems here, but this is definitely getting better in terms of reading, in terms of flow of it like that. Okay, and this is the last one here that I think is even acceptable now. This may even pass muster. So we have all the nice things in here. First, use Newton's famous law, F equals ma, to find the acceleration. Then you can use V is V naught plus A delta T to find the speed sometime later. Lastly, use the common kinematic equation, x is x naught plus V0 delta T plus half AT squared, can be used to find the new position of the object given the acceleration from equation 1. If you get stuck with equation 1, rearranging it to this, and there's a nice pause in there, might be more helpful as it yields A, the acceleration, as F, as this one more directly. So this is actually okay here, and some of the things that still may be a little bit wrong now is you definitely never would put a stack of equation like that in line. This should definitely be written here as F over M if it's in line like that. Only it just sort of messes up the typesetting when you have a vertical stack like that. And the other thing that's good about this prose here is the way it sort of refers to the equation by EQ1 and EQ2. And again, if I sort of contrast that with equation 1, which sort of has a capitalization problem, and also always writing, even if I did capitalize it, always writing out the word equation so many times gets to be a little wasteful and spacey even. So usually it's just abbreviated, like you could say like EQ1 or EQN1 or something like that. And so this document here has all those elements in it. Okay? And I think this is the best one here that I sort of got all cleaned up here. All the usual things. Looks like we have some nice flow, complete sentence. There's a period in there. Then you can use this to find the speed sometime later. Ooh, look at that. Looks like I even have a paragraph in here to break up an idea. But when I break up the idea, I continue on with a nice sentence with a comma there. It can be used to find the object x, given that it started with the position x naught, acceleration a, found from equation 1. So what's nice about this one here is that sort of hidden in my text in this sentence right here, I sort of explain the variables, right? Because you have this big equation here, and it also is important when you write the equation to explain what all the variables are. So I sort of combine that together in my prose here. I can see that x is the position, x naught is where it started, acceleration is a, and all that stuff is just wrapped in there, so it's kind of nice. And it looks like delta t was described up here. And then lastly, you can see I've got this equation sort of fixed. It's not that stack anymore, so it fits in a little bit better right there. And I have just nice punctuation all the way throughout. So this is probably the best version that I have thus far. Okay, so that's it on equations. And I hope then that you can sort of attack them and get them going properly in your writing. And you should just definitely review the earlier slide that if you really don't know what to do, treat equations like words. There's no reason to have funny punctuation around them, including colons and spaces and things like that. If you wouldn't do it with words, then you shouldn't do it with equations. Okay? So I hope this will help get your equation writing started.